Welcome to the Mind Solve podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan, and this episode is covering the topic of human being, not human doing. I want you to hear this message directly and to take this mindful moment of awareness and attentiveness to acknowledge that your human value is not determined purely by your productivity. Too often, in all work experiences in life, we deal with the external stressors that pressure us to determine our value by how much we can do or to prove our worth through our production. I want you to open your mind to an opportunity to think about how do you create more balance to deal with that kind of stress in your life and to create an experience that is healthy and sustainable. That is the essence of choosing joy. So in this podcast format, and all formats from MindSolve will follow this, I'm going to cover with you some key research findings and identified pieces of information that I want you to personally take note of. So if you're in a place and space right now where you can take notes or at least take check marks of information that relates directly to you, I want to encourage you to do that to start this learning journey. For this podcast episode, our agenda will be that we'll cover some research findings on stress from reliable evidence-based sources. Following that, we'll talk about some mindfulness practices and concepts that can help you. And then we'll end with some solutions that you can apply to your life immediately today. So first, I want to thank you for making the investment of time and energy. Time is the currency of life. How you invest and spend your time defines you. So what you're doing right now is giving yourself an opportunity to reach a place where you can be more focused on being a human being and not a human doing. So let's get started with some of the research. And I want you to listen closely to this research in terms of the findings. And again, I want you to take a check mark note of how does it resonate with you? So we'll start with first looking at some of the recent research from the American Institute of Stress. In their recent research for working professionals, this is some of the findings that came through that research. 83% of U.S. workers are suffering from work-related stress. 83%. 76% of U.S. workers report that the work-related stress in their life is negatively impacting their personal relationships with partners, with spouses, with children, having an impact on their ability to connect. 50% of U.S. workers are disengaged at their job as a result of the stress that they're experiencing at work, and it's reducing their personal level of productivity. So think about that for yourself. How does that resonate? How does that land on you? Do you relate? Now let's take it a step further. Let's imagine you're an executive or a business owner or a leader in any organization today, and there's great work in organizations being done to improve the workplace, but still yet stress has an impact. Here's some interesting statistics about how it's impacting businesses. According to the American Institute of Stress, work-related stress costs U.S. businesses $51 billion a year and an additional $26 billion in treatment cost. I can't think of any corporation or organization that could afford to spend in the billions to deal with stress impacting productivity. But yet again, we are human beings, not human doings. So if we create environments in which human beings feel like their productions are their cogs in a machine, stress can have a negative impact. Furthermore, U.S. companies spend about 75% of a worker's annual salary to cover the lost productivity or to replace workers that get burnt out by stress. Those are breathtaking. Just talking about it is breathtaking for me to think about that. So those are just some of the early statistics I can share with you regarding stress in the workplace and how it impacts professionals, according to the American Institute of Stress. Now, let's take a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics' recent findings as it relates to the Great Resignation. Since COVID impacted all of us, we saw a big impact on the workforce, particularly when it comes to stress. Here are the 4 emerging themes that came through in terms of how stress was driving people out of the workplace, driving them out the workforce, early retirement, or just resignation. It was noted that many of those folks felt like they were disrespected at work, marginalized, discrimination, and in some cases racism, caused them to leave the workplace, stressed. Second was lack of flexibility, processes in the workplace, production standards, limiting the creativity, innovation of workers, drove a lot of folks out of the workplace due to stress of trying to maintain themselves. Also, work-life balance, thinking through the constant contact sport of getting messages and texts and emails, never being able to unplug from a device that relates to their ability to do their job 24/7 around the clock. A cause of stress. Again, human doing, not human being, when it should be the inverse. And then the fourth thing was burnout. Now, this is an interesting one. Organizations try to respond with better incentives, more time off, flexible situations to help workers be more engaged in their jobs, in their workplace. But when you're burnt out, you're burnt out. It doesn't matter how big the incentive is. If the goals are continuing to increase and the stress is high, it's hard to maintain oneself. So again, as you're listening to this, I want you to be mindful and think about, how does this resonate with you? Does this speak specifically to your current situation right now? Again, it's breathtaking, just breathtaking to talk about it. Now let's go deeper. When we look at some other statistics here, I want to go to the American Psychological Association, also known as APA. The APA does a Stress in America report every year. It usually releases around the time of September, October in the fall. And the most recent report in 2022 provided us 4 key drivers of stress, top stressors. Again, this is an opportunity, if you can, take note for yourself. Be mindful and aware as I talk through these. 71% of adults feel tense or stressed out during the workday on a daily basis. 71%. It's very high. 56% of adults experience stress related to the fact that they're not being compensated competitively. They're worried about whether or not they can pay their bills, they can maintain their lifestyles, and take care of their families, because they just, quite frankly, are working harder and harder, but their pay is not keeping up with inflation. 54% of adults experience stress due to just pure burnout. They've been doing the same work for some time. They're ready to do something new. There's not a lot of dynamic change or creative energy in the workplace, so they're just stressed. And then another 52% of adults experience stress due to a lack of career growth and advancement. So they've been given those opportunities to do individual development plans, to talk to people in the organization, to explore other job opportunities, but still feels like they're hitting either a glass ceiling or a brick wall or an invisible door. And so they're stressed because they're feeling like time is ticking and they're not moving forward in their careers. Now, I don't want this to all be sad news, because we're going to talk about some solutions here. We're going to talk about ways to deal with this. We're going to find ways to gather your strengths. And I'm speaking directly to you. I want you to be listening as if I'm talking only to you in this moment, to check in to see, does any of this land on you and resonate for you? Because what you'll be doing by the time we're done with this episode, or after this episode, when you listen and watch this, is for you to be thinking about, what are your top triggers of stress, so we can identify how to go about changing and enhancing your lives. All right. So let's go back to the American Institute of Stress, and let's talk about what were the top 3 triggers of stress that came out of their research. So here's what we got from that. The number one trigger for most people at the highest percentage accounted for as triggers, 39% of the people in this study indicated that they're just burnt out. They're just tired of the job that they're doing. So sometimes it's a good idea to try something new, to change your role in your organization. There's a lot of great organizations with a lot of jobs and opportunities within the organization. But if you're not finding an opportunity to move throughout the organization to navigate, you might find yourself stressed out and feeling stalemated in your role. And when you're burnt out, it doesn't matter how much the incentive is. It doesn't matter how much the bonus is. If you're not enjoying your work and you're not getting fulfilled, you're a human being, you're going to burn out. That's a trigger. Is it a trigger for you? The second was at 31%, workers were dealing with interpersonal issues and conflicts in the workplace. Workplace civility, conflict, environments that have a low emotional intelligence or rife with conflicts. And those conflicts come in many forms. They come in conflict of cultural versus individualistic versus collectivism, cultural, gender, race, ethnicity, age, generational. Organizations that don't have guardrails and processes that are working for the individuals that experience this find themselves dealing with a lot of stress. And then third, at 24%, was just work-life imbalance and job instability, working long hours, putting in extra effort, and always feeling like the carpet's ready to be pulled, that job's going to go away, or that manager is holding that job over as a carrot or a stick, and it's not sustainable. It's stressful. Again, this is not about just pointing out the negative and the bad news, but it is telling you the truth. That's what we're going to do here in MindSolve. We're going to talk about the research findings, the evidence-based research findings, so that you can identify how does it relate personally to you and what you can do about solving that in a mindful way. So now we've established that there's a lot of stress. That's the obvious. We want to pinpoint, and I want you to take a moment right now to be thinking through, what are your top stress triggers? What is causing you to not have the ability to balance, right? Human being, not human doing. You are not created just to produce. We all need to work. We all need to make a living. We all need to make an earning to pay our bills and take care of ourselves and our families, but not at the expense of losing our human value. There's a way to balance that. So now let's talk about it. When we think through human being and human balance, the first thing we need to establish is, how does the brain and the mind function in a healthy way? So first, let's take, for instance, that the brain, let's define that. The brain is an organ that transfers information and energy throughout your body. As far as I'm concerned, it's the most important organ in your body. You can't live without the brain. It controls everything. And within the brain, we have the conceptual factor of our minds. Our minds are the embodiment of the brain. It's the way in which we process stimuli and information, particularly when it comes to external stress. It starts with the process of us experiencing that in a way that causes us to have what's called an automatic thought. Now, this comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, that there's a cognitive model that when you have an automatic thought, that automatic thought can trigger an emotion, and that emotion can trigger behaviors, right? Healthy or adaptive or maladaptive behaviors. Thoughts live on a continuum from helpful to unhelpful. And it just depends on whether it's a trigger or stress for you or not. So let's talk about that. Of the stressors that I've indicated through the research, here are some of the common automatic thoughts that might rise for one. And again, I want you to be thinking about yourself. Does this happen to you? Do these thoughts come to mind, or something similar to these thoughts? I'm going to read a few of them. I don't feel energized by the work anymore. I don't find this work intriguing. doesn't inspire me anymore. That might be an automatic thought based upon a trigger of stress that you're being burnt out, you're working harder, but you just don't feel the joy in the work that you're doing. Another example is, I don't belong because I don't feel valued by my leadership. I don't see growth for me. No matter how many goals I achieve, no matter how many accolades, no matter how many credentials that I acquire, my leadership doesn't seem to see me. And I see, from my standpoint, others getting advancement and promotions that I just cannot reach. That can be triggering. That can be stressful. I don't see anyone who looks like me in my organization doing the kind of things that I want to do. Doesn't mean that you lack diversity and inclusion, but it does mean that maybe you're not seeing people who have a similar background, similar family of origin, culture, ethnicity, language, gender identity, sexual orientation, whatever it may be. You're feeling stressed that that's a threat to you, that you are othered, that you don't belong. That's a reality. It can happen. Another example that's common: I'm so tired of the disrespect and disregard. Feeling unheard. Feeling emotionally hijacked by the experiences of not being included in the decision-making process. Ask yourself, do you go through that? Do you experience that? Again, being treated less than human, just a cog in the machine, is the thought that comes to mind. And again, we own our own thoughts. We have an internal locus of control as we're looking at this conceptually. We're not pointing fingers at other people. We're thinking about our own thoughts and how we process them. That's how we begin the process of enhancing our capabilities, of being more mindful, being more aware in the moment. Another one, this is a big one as well. I'm exhausted of working around the clock and having to always respond to messages and communication. I've seen this. I've talked to clients who've gone through this. They're on vacation, they're on their weekend at their kids' softball game or soccer game, and they've got their smartphone device and they're getting messages about work. They're getting updates. They're getting questions about a report or a meeting that's coming up on the following Monday. And it's stressful. And remember, stress is an external factor, different than mental disorders, which is out of scope for this topic. But stress is something that we all deal with. And not all stress is bad, but when it gets to the point that it's flooding you beyond your window of tolerance, which we're going to talk about, then it becomes an issue of making you more of a human doing. So we've covered a lot so far, and I'm hopeful. So I don't want you to think that this is all despair, but you deserve to hear the truth. And that's what I'm going to give you on this podcast. I'm always going to talk straight with you and give it to you as I'm talking directly to you individually to help you think about what can you do to learn and enhance your experience when it comes to stress in your life. Now that we've covered automatic thoughts, where do these automatic thoughts go? So what happens with these automatic thoughts are pretty simple in concept. There's a linkage. You have a stressor that impacts you and stimulates you. It populates an automatic thought. That automatic thought kicks into the amygdala of the brain, the base core of the brain, the most distinctive part of the brain, creates an emotional reaction. It could be anger, it could be fear, it could be sadness, it could be a combination of convergence of emotions. Those emotions start to show up in your breathing and your body response. And this is where I want you to pay close attention and take note of this. The breath matches the thought. If you're stressed, your breath becomes more shallow. It becomes more short. Your body sensations start to talk to you and speak to you. And this is where being mindfully aware is so vital and so important to your well-being, to check in with your breath. That's one of the first things you're going to learn today through this episode is how do you become more mindfully aware of how stress is impacting and influencing your body and your biosphere connection. And then through that breath, through that body response is the behavioral action. This is where people blow up. They send that email that they probably shouldn't send. They make that comment that they can't take back. Or even worse, we start to see in the workplace more workplace violence, which we know can be very dangerous for all impacted. Whether you're a receiver of that violence, perpetrator of that violence, or you're witnessing that violence, creates a very, very unhealthy work environment, creates a very non-conducive, violent, incivil condition for you to function in. And it's happening in workplaces across our country. So again, knowing that your automatic thought gets triggered from the stress that leads to your emotional reaction in your brain, you feel that emotion in your body, you sense it in your breath, okay? And it comes out in behavioral action and response. So the question is, why does that happen? Because we're human. We're still animals. We might be on the highest intelligence level of the animal kingdom on this planet. However, we're still human beings. That stress response, that cortisol that kicks into your body from a hormonal standpoint is there to protect you. If you're taking a hike on a foothill and you come across a bear or a cougar here in California, you want that stress to kick in so that you can have your response, a fight, flight response kick in through the sympathetic nervous system. That is there to protect us. That's the brain working as it doing what it's supposed to do as a human being. But when you're overtaxing that system over time, it doesn't help you. It harms you. It has serious health and medical implications. So let's talk about the window of tolerance. Now, this concept's been covered by Dr. Dan Siegel very well in many of his books. And what I like about the window of tolerance, it gives conceptual understanding of how you deal with stress. We all have our window of tolerance, okay? Which means that we all have a level of stress that we can manage and handle and sustain ourselves. But then when it's too stressful, we might have a situation of what's called hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is when we get into the fight or flight response. We're so stressed out that we cannot sustain ourselves in that situation, that we either want to escape or we wanted to defend ourselves because we feel like it's an imminent threat. Unfortunately, in the workplace, it's not appropriate behavior for you to run out of a conference room because you're feeling stressed. It's also not appropriate behavior to pick up a coffee cup and throw it across the room and start a physical confrontation or fight because you're feeling stressed. So that's showing that when you're feeling that in your breath, in your body, you're flooded over your window of tolerance, you're in that fight or flight response. That right there is an indication that you have a stress trigger that you need to work on. I want you to be thinking right now, if you've had that experience, what was the stressor that caused you to get there? What caused that behavioral action? Take note of it because you want to work on it. That's the opportunity here for you. On the opposite side of that window of tolerance is what we call hypoarousal. Not hyper, but hypoarousal. That's the freeze. That's getting the email that you're terrified of what that means. I need to talk to you about your performance. And you freeze. You can't fight. You can't fight. This is someone who has power over your work, potentially over your livelihood, over your career, and you're stressed and you're triggered because the relationship you have with this person is not one that is transformational. It's very transactional. We'll talk about that in future episodes. That means you're flooded out your window again. Make note of that for yourself. If you've had that experience, that's a trigger for you. This is the essence of understanding your window of tolerance. This is being mindful and thoughtful and aware of who you are and what your experiences are so that you can have a better locus of control and enhance your capabilities to deal with stress, to be more human being and not human doing. So we've covered the window of tolerance pretty well. Let's talk about human being, not human doing, what that means in terms of balance. So if you were to visualize a scale and two sides of the scale, on one side of the scale, you have a stack of human being factors that relate to what you would think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, central needs for human beings. So I'm gonna list those for you so you can take note of them for yourself. And you can watch this podcast again and again if you need to take note of it a second time. So at the base of that side of the scale, let's say the left side of the scale, is nutrition, eating, and drinking water. Now, you always want to consult with your medical doctor or your licensed nutrition or dietitian. I recommend that everyone aspire to get 3.7 liters of water per day, which is amount to about, I think, 168 ounces of water per day, and a balanced macronutrient intake of food. Macronutrients meaning protein, which I believe is the number one macronutrient to focus on, carbohydrates, and your fats. You need all three. Along with that, getting that in a way that is consistent, providing your body the energy. Remember, water and food is energy. It keeps our body system working, particularly the brain. So that's the first layer. Above that layer is rest and proper sleep hygiene. Are you getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep per night? Preferably closer to 8 hours. This again keeps your system and your brain regulated. Rest is important. There's no honor in burning yourself out physically, and you're no good to yourself. If you're empty, you can't pour anything into anyone else or any work or creation you want to do. Again, human being, not human doing. Yes, you knew it was coming. Above, rest, sleep, and including in that meditation effectiveness, if you practice meditation, which is a great practice, movement, exercise, fitness, even if it's 30 minutes 3 times a week, whether that's strength conditioning or walking, having a regimen that works for you within your schedule. You're probably already getting tired hearing this, but this is important for you to know. This is about human being, not human doing. Okay, the next 3 layers are pretty straightforward. Human connection. Connecting with people that you care about and that care about you in a way that is transformational and not transactional. Every time you connect with someone, it doesn't need to be about what you're going to give me and what I'm going to give you. That is not healthy nor sustainable. That's not human being. That's more human doing. But connecting with people just because you care about them and they care about you, whether that's breaking bread, having a conversation, a FaceTime, a Zoom call, or a walk, human connection is important. Learning and leisure. Learning is earning. The more you keep learning, leisure, picking up a craft, doing something that's going to be creative for you, that causes the effect of what we know by science as neuroplasticity, rewiring the brain, introducing the brain into something novel that you haven't experienced before. This is healthy. This keeps you human. And then final, healing and recovery. Making your regular medical and doctor appointments. That includes all healthcare. That includes regular physical, dental care, optometry care for your eyes if needed, mental health care. Psychotherapy is health care, okay? Seeing someone, a specialist if you have a special need. All of those factors, not complex science, but it's core to being human. In a world that is full of stress and that's complex, that's one side of the scale of balance. The other side of the scale is pretty simple. Production activity and maintenance activity. In production activity, it's your career, it's your work, it's your job. Now, you might get a lot of fulfillment from the work that you do. It may be very purposeful to who you are and your identity, but not to the extent that you're working, that you're not being human, that you don't have the other layers I talked about. Nutrition, eating, drinking water, proper rest hygiene, sleep, meditation, human connection with people that you care about, that care about you. Having the ability to have learning and leisure, healing and recovery, taking care of yourself. And I almost forgot movement, physical movement and activity, supporting the muscular skeleton structure of your body, getting your body actively moving. Now, Take a moment again. Are you doing it? Are you balanced? Are you human being and not human doing? Or do you find yourself buying into the toxic positivity about, hey, keep working. Work is everything. Your career matters more than anything in this world. You got to be the best of the best of the best and be the best on the ranking report. To the extent that you're suffering, that you can't sustain yourself, that you're losing yourself, that you're losing the people in your life that matter. This is not living. This is existing. This is doing. You're more valuable than what you produce. What you produce is important and it's essential to support your life and your lifestyle, but it most certainly does not define who you are. And I'm giving you permission to give yourself an opportunity to look in the mirror and reflect on that important point for yourself. All right. So we've covered the human balance concept. We're going to cover other couple points here, and then we're going to get to some solutions here. So the first other 2 points I want to cover is this. When we say human being, not human doing, I want to be very clear that this is not about you judging yourself. Mindfulness is not about judgment of self. Mindfulness is about paying attention in a way that you're really acknowledging it, observing, and being attentive to yourself, caring for yourself in a way that you're being patient with oneself and recognizing that you have great strengths and power by choosing your beliefs and your thoughts and how they frame your experience. That's part of the essence of mindfulness. The other point that I want to make is that mindfulness encourages us to be champions of hope. Don't buy into the concept that hope is a plan for failure. I know that's been said in business for many years. I've been one of those participants who've made that comment before. Hope is what makes us more human. Aspiring to be greater and to be better by being more human in essential ways is a beautiful experience for you and for those that are closest to you. So don't give away hope. Those are the 2 other points I wanted to make as I tie together the point of the human balance concept. Now, if you've been taking note and paying close attention to solutions coming up next, here's your time to really pay close attention to how you can go about improving the solutions in your life by being more human being and not human doing. The first is mind-body awareness, stress regulation. In those moments of stress, there is a scientifically proven way to deal with that. This is based upon mindfulness-based stress reduction and is simply a breathing, grounding exercise. And this is what it takes. You breathe in through your nose for up to 4 seconds. You hold that breath for 2 seconds. And you release that breath for 6 seconds out of your mouth. So I'm going to model it for you now, and I want you to try it with me. So let's start now. You can hear the breath. Try it again. 4 seconds into your nose. Hold it for 2 seconds. Release the breath up to 6 seconds out of your mouth. By doing this in those moments of stress when you're triggered, right? When you're at work or you get that email or you get that text response or you get that person who you have an interpersonal conflict with or whatever the trigger may be, I want you to be kind to yourself and to regulate your system by having a mind-body awareness by using this breathing technique. 4 seconds into your nose only, holding it for 2 seconds, and releasing it from your mouth up to 6 seconds. I imagine if you're practicing that right now, this moment, you already feel better. You can do it quietly in your office. You can go into a bathroom stall if you want to do it privately with no one seeing you. You can do it in your car when you arrive at your place of work. You can take your break, your lunch break, and do it. Practice it throughout the day. Practice as often as you need to do it. even feel comfortable saying to your colleagues and your associates, if you don't mind, I need a moment to gather myself. If you have to step away, use this mind-body awareness. This is the first solution. It's a very simple solution that you can apply today. I encourage you to apply it today to start to reduce the stress. Remember, thoughts match the breath. Breath matches the thought. When you start to feel your breath changing and your breath becomes shallow and your heart becomes accelerated, that's an indication that you're experiencing stress and you may have been triggered. Not hard. Let's build on that. The second solution we're going to cover of the three before we wrap up is mindful observation. Now, this is very important because the study that I recently read that was back in 2010, it was conducted by Harvard, so it's a little dated. It stated that adults are not paying attention 47% of the time. We're distracted. And we buy into this concept that we can multitask. Multitasking is a myth. What we do is we task switch. So I know there's a lot of great parents, primary care providers that say, oh, I multitask all day. I have kids at home. I'm cooking. I'm doing laundry. I'm working at home, taking care of my family from the home. And I multitask. You're not multitasking. You're task switching. And you're not really paying attention to the other thing you think you're doing. You're really shifting your attention. That also shows up in the workplace wherever we work, across all industries. So what I want you to practice as another solution, as a mind-solve solution, is mindful observation. And it includes three things that are components of critical thinking. This is based upon cognitive classifications of the highest order of thinking, but it's mindfully focused. So again, pay close attention to these three steps. The first step is to analyze the stress trigger that you're experiencing. Identifying how it shows up for you. What is the thought? What's the emotional response or emotional convergence that you experience? And what are the sensations in your body? So let me use an example. Let's say, for instance, I am experiencing a trigger of I feel disrespected because every time I give a comment on the conference call, there's someone who counters me that seems to just be my antagonist, that they're taking the opposing position every time. No, we shouldn't start the meeting at 9:00. We should start the meeting at 8:00 because 8:00 is better than 9:00. And now I've developed a taste for this person's approach and response to me that I'm triggered. And I'm not judging myself. I'm not really paying so much attention on that person, but I'm acknowledging that it's a trigger for me. So what I want to do is ask myself, the question is, what is it about that gets me upset? Why do I feel disrespected? What is the thought, the automatic thought there? And what's the emotion that I'm feeling? Is it anger? Is it fear that maybe this person is trying to sabotage me in these calls? Is it a combination of the two? And how does it feel in my body? Do I feel myself tensing in my shoulders and my arms, or my muscles tensing? Is my voice changing? Is my choice of words changing when I respond? Analyzing and looking in at yourself, not judging, but just simply making an observation and being aware is number one. Analyze those triggers. Number two is to evaluate and identify what are the conditions that I have in my control in this scenario to reduce the stress. Do I have control over this person's behavior? Not at all. The moment you think you're in control of someone else is the moment you're completely out of control. Again, let me repeat that. The moment you think you're in control of someone is the moment you're completely out of control. And that is stressful. That gets you in the process of just reacting and responding and doing and not being in the moment, being present in the moment. So the second step of evaluation to evaluate is, what is it about that person speaking up with a different opinion that triggers me? Maybe I don't know yet. Maybe I need to explore that and cognitively reframe that thought about this person. Maybe I need to see them very differently so that it's good for me. So I can reduce that stress of feeling disrespected as a trigger. The third is innovate. Leveraging the mind body awareness breathing we talked about during that moment to adapt my thoughts, to get control of myself, even if it means I need to take a break and step away. It's okay to say, wow, that's an interesting thought. 8 o'clock could work too. Okay, I can consider that. Let me give that some more thought. Let go and detach from the situation to release yourself from the stressful engagement. Again, not feeling the need to have to do something to everything that happens in that moment, but being present in that moment, being human, being able to be self-compassionate and empowered in that experience. Again, this is the essence of human being, not human doing. Not allowing yourself to be a victim to all the circumstances that take place, but also being mindfully engaged in a way that you're caring for yourself in each situation that you experience that is stressful. Those are the 3 steps of mindful observation. Analyze, evaluate, and innovate how you frame that thought, how you frame that trigger, and how you take control of your own mind-body experience, caring for yourself, remembering the breath matches the thought. If your breathing is changing and accelerating, it's probably because you're having an automatic thought that is stressful, that is triggering you. Pay attention to the body. The body speaks to you. All right. So let's get to our last solution for this episode. This is the mindful triad. This is about building stress resiliency. It's not just about the moment, but it's about a way of practicing ongoing to take care of yourself. And it pulls in some of those elements that I talked about in the human balance. You've heard these again and again, I'm sure. You've heard them from personal trainers potentially who do a great job of helping you with your physical fitness and wellness. You may have heard them from your doctor, your medical doctor, maybe from your psychotherapist. And all of those professions are valuable professions that are working collaboratively to help you be well and enhance your wellness. So it's good that you're leveraging those experts if you're doing that. It's a great thing to be seeking help for your overall wellness. You should never be ashamed of that. But let's go through the mindful triad. The first one that I'm recommending to you, and again, this is going to challenge some of you. Some of you have already practicing this. Daily meditation. Starting with this minimum of 5 minutes per day. You can do daily meditation through guided practice with using a lot of great apps out there, YouTube recordings that are available, lots of fitness apps that have meditation sessions on there. Play it right from your smartphone. Starting at 5 minutes and then working your way up progressively to get to 30 minutes per day. That might sound like a lofty endeavor for some, but if you start, you can get there. So that's number 1, daily meditation. Meditation helps your brain develop the ability to regulate your experiences of stress over time. It helps you increase your ability to calm your overall mind-body awareness, and it creates clarity in your thought. It has great benefits to your brain neuronically in terms of building more neuroplasticity in your brain and rewire so that you're sharper and more acute to the things that come at you spontaneously. Number 2, as mentioned earlier, weekly exercise, physical fitness. That looks different for all of us. Again, consulting with your medical doctor or your physical advisor, because there's some limitations that come into place. It could be a bike, a Peloton, like you see here in my office. It could be taking a walk. It could be intense strength conditioning, depending on your situation. It could be a combination of different factors, swimming. There's a variety of ways you can get that exercise. Doing that at least 30 minutes mindfully 3 days a week. And when I say mindfully, paying attention to your body, not just exercising because you're saying to yourself that automatic thought, I've got to do this because I've been told by my medical doctor or I've been told by Dr. Jonathan this is a good idea, but really caring for yourself and using this mindful movement of exercise as a way to check in your body. Notice the sensations in your body, tightness, issues in areas that might not feel so good, and areas that do feel good, like, wow, I feel like I'm getting stronger, or I'm getting more endurance and I'm gaining more stability. I'm seeing my heart rate reduce. Monitoring and being mindful in each moment as you experience that. This is the essence of human being, not human doing. Being attentive to your body and your mind together. And then the third one is the easy one to recap is daily nutrition. 3.7 liters of water per day. Yes, I said it. 3.7 liters of water per day. Whether you do that through a water refill, through a fountain, or you purchase water, or you put something in your water that give it a little flavor. If you don't like the taste of water, getting your water is vital to your overall biological system, and it's good for your mental state of being and being mindfully connected. With that water, nutrition, macronutrients. And it doesn't matter what diet you choose to use, as long as your diet is balanced and it's capturing the macronutrients that your body needs at the weight and the level that you're set at with the advice of your medical doctor or your licensed nutrition or dietitian. Getting the nutrition is important. These are all mindfulness-based stress reduction, evidence-proven factors that, when done consistently, over time has a way of enhancing your overall wellness and dealing with stress because your body is getting the energy, the rest, the ability to be resilient in moments of stress. We've covered a lot. I hope you've taken a lot of notes about what you're thinking in terms of what you need, what you can do for yourself to be more human being and not human doing, because you deserve that. So here's where I want to wrap us. Time is the currency of life. How we invest and spend our time defines us. There's no escaping that. I want to thank you for the investment of time of joining this podcast and listening and learning about what you can do to work through some of the stress you may be experiencing. Some of the stress indicators that I pointed out from the research that resonate with you. Identifying for yourself, what are your triggers? What you can do to enhance your experience so that you don't feel like you're just only valued by what you can produce, whether that be for your employment, your employers, your family, your friends. None of us were created just to be production units or cogs in the machine. Yes, our production matters and how we contribute to our society and to our humanity, but it most certainly doesn't determine your human value. And you deserve to live. You deserve to experience joy. And choosing joy is not just simply choosing joy. Choosing joy is making choices of doing things that are both healthy and sustainable over time that will enhance your life and the life of those around you and creates more kindness in the world because you're more joyful as a being. You're experiencing life the way you should experience life, by being whole, by being connected and being aware and mindful of who you are. So I want to make sure that that point is clear, what I mean by human being, not human doing. I want to thank you for investing this time with the MindSoft podcast. Your following and support matters as I continue to share this information on upcoming episodes. So I welcome you to subscribe to this podcast, to subscribe to the YouTube channel for MindSoft, to follow us on our website at mindsoft.org for information, subscribe to get more information, and share this podcast with friends and family. Share it with your employers, share it with your peers. If you think there's something that can help others as well as helping you, share it. Learning is earning. We can learn together. With that, I leave you with this. Be mindful and choose joy. Until next time, I wish you well. Dr. Jonathan speaking on the truth about mindfulness for you.